evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jamie Conkling, and I am the Executive Director of the Virginia State Golf Association. On behalf of the Board of Directors and staff, I'd like to welcome all of you to the Homestead for the 100th Amateur Championship and the Past Champions Celebration. We hope it's a very special occasion, and we hope you enjoy the evening. To begin the program, I would like to introduce Mr. Lee Coble, the President of the VSGA.
Thank you, Jamie. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoy the evening as we celebrate our 100th VSGA Amateur Championship. In doing so, we think it's only appropriate to recognize our past VSGA Amateur champions who have hoisted the trophy and who you will hear more about later in the program. Before we begin dinner, I would like to recognize some special guests in attendance. Representing the USGA, Kathy Gordon, Southeastern Director of Regional Affairs. Kathy. West Virginia Golf Association, Ken Tackett, Executive Director of the West Virginia Golf Association. As many of you may know, the VSGA and the Homestead have been solid friends and partners for many decades. This week will mark the 43rd playing of the VSGA Amateur Championship at the Homestead. Nearly 50% of all VSGA Amateur Championships have been conducted at this storied resort. Representing the Homestead who are with us here tonight, Mark Fry, Bobby Fry, Peter Ferrone, Doug Miller, Herman Perry, Barry Ryder, Don Ryder, and J.C. Sneed. Representing the media who are here with us tonight, Randy King, Roanoke Times, Mark Pfeiffer, Virginia Review in Covington. Representing the VSGA past presidents, 1987 and 1988, Harry Lee. 1989 and 1990, Vinny Giles. 1991 and 1992, Jeff Fleischman. 1993 and 1994, Thomas Kidd Jr. 1997 and 1998, Dick Dillard. 2003 and 2005, Grant Key III. 2006 and 2007, Barry Shea. 2010 and 2011, Richard White. We would also like to recognize our rules officials in attendance tonight, including Galen Hill, who has officiated more than 1/3 of the 100 VSGA Amateur Championships that have been conducted. Galen. Lastly, but surely not least, I would like to recognize and thank the VSGA Board of Directors and the VSGA staff, for we could not pull any of this off without their help. Thank you. I would also like to recognize former staff members that are in attendance tonight, Gene Nichols, and Richard Smith. Jamie told me to play it real straight tonight. I was going to say something, I am not going to say it. At this time, I would like to ask Terry Toller to come forward and offer the invocation. Terry?
Thank you, Lee. Good evening. Pray with me. Father God, you're the God of all our blessings, and we thank you for those blessings. You have given us a game that provides us fellowship and, best of all, friendships that last a lifetime. Father God, we ask your blessing on this meal this evening as we enjoy it. We ask you to bless the food to nourish our body, and best of all, bless us to your service. All this we ask in your loving name. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Please continue eating. We hope you've enjoyed your dinner this evening. Let's give the Homestead staff a round of applause. The reason we have gathered here this evening is to recognize and celebrate the 100th VSGA Amateur Championship and our past amateur champions. In so doing, I would like to introduce David Partridge to lead the way. David?
Thank you, Lee, and good evening to everyone. We're delighted all of you can be here this evening for this very special occasion, and we are particularly pleased that so many of our past champions are here in attendance as we mark the 100th State Amateur Championship and celebrate the rich history of this event. It is only fitting that this celebration takes place here at the Homestead that has meant so much to golf and has been such an ardent supporter of the Virginia State Golf Association. It will be my pleasure this evening to introduce the past champions who are here, as well as to recognize a few of the past winners who have left an indelible mark not only on this championship, but also on the history of golf in Virginia. They may no longer be with us, but their legacy always will be. As I call your name, please stand so you can be recognized as a past champion. However, in the interest of time, if you would kindly hold your applause until all the champions have been introduced, we can get everybody out of here in a reasonable period of time. We'll begin, as we did with the first state amateur in 1911, and you might say, well, why are we now at 100? But there were some war years in there, and thus the reason this is the 100th. In recognizing some of the great players that have won in the past, we'll begin with Billy Howell. Billy won 4 state amateur titles, the first coming in 1928, when he was only 16 years of age. In 1931, Billy had a sensational season when, in addition to winning his second state amateur, he was a semifinalist in the United States Amateur, losing a dramatic match to the eventual champion, Francis Ouimet. Billy represented the United States on the 1932 Walker Cup team and played in the inaugural Masters tournament in 1934. For any of you youngsters out there who don't know Francis Ouimet is, or who he is, please get on your smartphones before tomorrow morning, because there's going to be a test on the first tee. If you can't tell us who he is and why he was important, we're not going to let you play. Chandler Harper. Mr. Harper was a 3-time state amateur champion during the early 30s and went on to become an historic golf professional, both nationally and within the Commonwealth. While Chandler spent the vast majority of his time at his beloved Bidewee in Portsmouth, he won 7 times on the tour, including the 1950 PGA Championship and the 1955 Colonial National Amateur. A Ryder Cupper who was affectionately known as Old Bones, Chandler had a magical short game and was one of the finest wedge and bunker players the game has ever known. Also an excellent teacher, Chandler had a major influence on many golfers in Tidewater and was very instrumental in helping Curtis Strange develop into the great champion he became. Even in his later years, Mr. Harper was a sensational player, and in fact he won several state open championships after he turned 50 years of age. He captured the 1965 National Senior Open Championship and the 1968 Senior PGA Championship. He won the Virginia State Open a record 9 times and has been inducted into the PGA Hall of Fame and the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame. Jimmy Watts. The 1938 State Amateur Champion was Jimmy Watts, the father-in-law of Vinny Giles, and obviously the father of Key, who is Vinny's lovely wife. Jimmy maintained a lifelong passion and excellence for golf. Anyone who knew Jimmy or watched him play knew just how intensely he felt about the game. His enthusiasm is further evidenced by the fact that he also won the Virginia Senior Amateur Championship in 1974, and then in 1982, 44 years after he won the State Amateur, and at the tender age of 66, he played again in the finals of the Virginia Senior Amateur Championship. Wenzel Spencer. Winning for the first time in 1939, Wenzel is a 5-time state champion and trails only Vinny Giles in the number of times he won the State Amateur. Sadly, Wenzel passed away in early May at the age of 94. He had been so looking forward to being here tonight to renew acquaintances with so many of his friends and people that he'd played golf with over the years. A passionate golfer for all his years, Wenzel died appropriately in the place he loved most, on the golf course. And in keeping with the skill he had exhibited throughout his life, he was 4 under par through 7 holes on that very sad day. Though small of stature and not particularly long off the tee, Wenzel was a superb shot maker and a gifted iron player. Those skills are reflected by the fact he once held 7 different course records and had 28 holes in one. While highly competitive, Wenzel was a fine sportsman and a good friend to many who knew him. Apart from his triumphs in the Virginia Amateur, his remarkable record included 11 Peninsula Amateur titles and victories in the Valentine Invitational and the Belhaven Invitational. Jack Hamilton. Reverend Hamilton, the winner in 1942, 1947, and 1949, is one of only 7 golfers to have won the State Amateur 3 or more times. Having captured 3 out of 5 championships played, it is very possible Jack might have won more titles, if not for 3 years during the war when the championship was not played. While he briefly considered turning professional, immediately after capturing his 3rd amateur title, Jack stopped playing golf competitively altogether and moved to Texas to begin studying to become a Baptist minister. He served as a pastor for 3 churches in Virginia over the next 50 years and also preached in many foreign countries throughout the world. Connie Sellers. Connie is here tonight. He may well be the oldest living champion as a state amateur champion. If there was ever any doubt, you know now that golf is a game of a lifetime. Mr. Sellers captured the VSGA Amateur Crown in 1951, defeating George Fulton, another outstanding player who would later go on to become a Virginia Amateur champion. The final was played here at the Homestead, and then 44 years later, again on the Cascades course, Connie won the VSGA Super Senior title, demonstrating his continuing compassion and excellence for the game. Among his many other achievements, Connie won several Roanoke County City Championships and starred on the Virginia Tech golf team. A co-captain of the golf team, Connie led the Hokies to 14 straight wins over state teams in the 1940s. He was elected to the Virginia Tech Sports Hall of Fame in 1996. Wayne Jackson. One of the premier golfers during Virginia's golden era of amateur golf was Peninsula native Wayne Jackson. Wayne won 2 amateur titles in 1956 and 1965, and he also finished second twice, both times to Mr. Giles. In 1969, in one of the most dramatic, closely fought, contested finals ever played, Wayne battled Vinny, and please remember Vinny was at the height of his powers at that point. Wayne battled Vinny even for 35 holes, only to have Vinny make a miraculous up and down from heavy rough from behind the bunker to the right of the number 18 on the Cascades course to edge Wayne 1 up. Apart from his great record in the state amateur, Wayne won the inaugural VSGA Mid-Amateur Championship and was the low amateur in the state open on 4 different occasions. He also won the VSGA 4-ball championship with his partner, Lanny Watkins. In addition to his state success, Wayne is a 3-time winner of the prestigious Valentine Invitational and a 2-time victor of the Kenridge Invitational, as well as a Richmond City Amateur Champion on 2 occasions. Jimmy Flippin. Jimmy is a lifelong resident of Danville and a forever member of Danville Golf Club. He won the state amateur in 1958. He defeated Walter Lawrence, the father of 1980 state champion Mark Lawrence, in that final match. Jimmy enjoyed success as a young golfer, qualifying for 3 national junior events and winning the individual state high school championship while leading George Washington High School to the state title. In a testament to his resiliency, Jimmy had attempted to qualify for the state amateur in 1957 and was not able to even make the field. But he persevered, and the following year, he won the championship he most wanted to win. Ned Baber. Ned captured his victory in 1960 in the longest final match in the history of the state amateur. Ned defeated Wright Garrett, an outstanding player and an All-American on the powerhouse University of Houston golf team, on the 39th hole of their extraordinary duel. Ned also partnered with Vinny Giles to win 2 VSGA 4-ball championships and would later add a VSGA Super Senior title, as well as a Society of Seniors 4-ball championship. Ned also captured the inaugural Foxbus, the Valentine Invitational, as well as 2 Roanoke County City Championships and the Richmond City Amateur. Bobby Loy. Mr. Loy seized his state amateur in 1961, besting Barkley Andrews, the father of Virginia great Donna Andrews, in that final match. 3 down after the morning round of the 36-hole final, Bobby changed caddies for the second round and came storming back to win 3-1. His excellent physical conditioning may well have been the difference in the match at the end of that grueling week. Bobby spent part of his honeymoon at the state amateur during the tournament, and so we can only assume that his profound marital bliss inspired him to play his best golf to capture his signature victory in the state amateur. Sam Wallace. Sam is a 2-time state amateur champion, having captured the title in 1967 and again in 1978. Even as a very young man, Sam was a fine player, winning the Williamsburg City Championship and losing in the finals in 1962 when Vinny won his first state amateur title. A longtime fixture among Virginia's finest amateurs during the 1960s and 1970s, what many have referred to as the golden era of amateur golf in Virginia, Sam was a fierce competitor and an excellent putter. On the strength of his victory in the amateur, Sam was selected to play in an exhibition match along with Vinny Giles and against Jack Nicklaus and Mason Rudolph at the Golden Horseshoe in September 1967. While Vinny was leading that match for most of the way, in true Nicklaus-like fashion, Jack made a mile of putts over the closing holes to overtake Vinny and shoot 67, which for many years stood as the course record at Golden Horseshoe. Lanny Watkins. Lanny had a truly remarkable year in 1970, winning the Virginia State Amateur title along with the United States Amateur, the Western Amateur, and the Southern Amateur. As all of you know, Lanny went on to have a marvelous professional career that included 21 tour wins and victories in the PGA Championship as well as the Tournament Players Championship. He was elected to the World Golf Hall of Fame in 2009. While Lanny's accomplishments on the tour were extraordinary, he is perhaps best remembered for his incredible record in the Ryder Cup. He played on 8 Ryder Cup teams, tying for the most appearances of any American with Billy Casper and Raymond Floyd. Over those 8 appearances, Lanny earned 21.5 points in Ryder Cup, one of the best records on either side of the competition in the history of the Ryder Cup. Lanny was a fearsome competitor who struck one of the most memorable shots in Ryder Cup history in 1983 when he wedged his ball to within a foot of a cup on the final decisive hole of the competition to ensure victory for the United States. Bobby Watkins. Bobby won the 1972 Amateur and also won the Virginia State Open on 3 occasions. He went on to enjoy a fine professional career, both on the regular tour and on the senior tour. Though he never won on U.S. soil on the regular tour, Bobby won 3 times in Europe and in Japan, and had 4 victories on the senior tour, including 1 major, the 2006 Senior Players Championship. Bobby and Lanny met in the finals of the State Amateur in 1970, the only time in Virginia history that brothers have played for the championship. Carl Peterson. the wild man. Carl won the 1973 State Amateur here at the Cascades, besting Harry Lee, another fabulous player from Danville, who had defeated Bobby Watkins on the 19th hole in the semifinals, which included, by the way, one of the prettiest bunker shots on the 17th hole that Harry holed out for an eagle. While perhaps not the most talented player in the field that year, Carl was a fine competitor, and he scratched and clawed his way to victory that week, as is usually necessary in match play. Carl's victory culminated in an incredible 26-year run of state amateurs held here at the Homestead that included some fantastic competition and truly outstanding golfers. Curtis Strange. Curtis won 2 consecutive state amateur titles in 1974 and 75, and perhaps the most dominating overall performance in the history of the state amateur at match play. In 1975, Curtis went 70 holes at demanding Cedar Point Country Club before recording his first bogey. Can you imagine going 70 holes without a bogey? Over that stretch, he shot 21 under par and defeated his opponents by an average score of 6 and 5 to advance to the final. In the championship match, which had to be postponed, by the way, for monsoon-like rains, Curtis picked up right where he left off and continued his incredible play, winning 8 and 6 over O.D. Gardner, another very fine player, to win his second amateur crown. Curtis won virtually every major amateur event, including the Eastern, the Western, as well as the North and South Amateur on 2 occasions. As a freshman, he won the NCAA championship and led his beloved Demon Deacons to the team title. That Wake Forest team included such greats as Jay Haas, Bob Byman, Tim Saylor, David Thor, and Scott Hoke, and has been described by many as the greatest collegiate team ever assembled. And I would certainly not argue against them, because I played against those guys, and they wore us out every place we went. I actually thought I was a pretty good player until I played with Curtis in the State Open in the early 70s and found out just how good somebody could play. Curtis went on to have a spectacular professional career that included 17 tour wins and 2 consecutive U.S. Open titles, and nearly a third. Curtis was the leading money winner on the tour 3 times, and he was the first professional golfer to ever win over $1 million in a single season. Curtis played on the Ryder Cup team 5 times, and he captained the United States squad in 2002. In 2005, he was inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame. Now, one of the biggest upset in sports is the fact that Skeeter is not sitting with Curtis. They were joined at the hip when they were kids. The first time I ever met him, they were side by side. But anyway, Skeeter is apparently somewhere else at another table. But we're up to Skeeter at this point, who won the State Amateur in 1976. And as Curtis will probably remind you, he only won because Curtis was no longer playing. But that's another story. Anyway, Skeeter won in 1976, and believe me, Skeeter could really play. He won by the largest margin of victory in history at match play, defeating John Bruce 11-10 at Chatmoss. And just in case you might think that was some kind of fluke, please remember that John Bruce was a fabulous golfer in his own right. While he never won the State Amateur, he won 4 consecutive State Open titles. He's the only amateur to ever do so. So clearly, Skeeter could really play, and he was on top of his game that week. An All-American 2 times at East Tennessee State University, Skeeter would later play in 3 United States Opens after turning professional. He played in those U.S. Opens and also won the Mid-Atlantic PGA Championship, as well as the Mid-Atlantic PGA Assistance Championship. Neff McClary. Neff won in 1977, winning his title at Washington Golf and Country Club in Arlington. Neff defeated Virginia State Open champion and United States quarterfinalist in the U.S. Amateur. If you know Neff, that is a perfect picture. He is a down-to-earth, salt-of-the-earth, greatest guy you'd ever want to meet, and a great champion. Neff won in 1977, as I mentioned, and he beat Billy Civic Billy was a great player. He won the State Open and was also a quarterfinalist in the United States Amateur. And he won a dramatic final match. Among Neff's many other victories, he would later win the VSGA Mid-Amateur Championship, as well as the Northern Virginia Amateur title on 3 occasions. A star player on the Virginia Tech golf team, Neff was later inducted into the Virginia Tech Sports Hall of Fame in 1994. Steve Smith. Talk about a great guy. Meet Steve Smith sometime. Steve Smith won the 1979 Amateur on his way to having one of the greatest years for an amateur in Virginia golf history. In addition to winning the State Amateur at the Homestead, Steve also captured the VSGA State Open Championship by 5 shots at his hometown course, Chatmoss. Steve was a great player from a very young age and led Martinsville High School to the State High School Championship, as well as winning the 1974 VSGA Junior Championship. Mark Lawrence. Mark claimed the amateur title in 1980 at Willow Oaks Country Club in Richmond, besting longtime Virginia stalwart Gil Fitzhugh in the finals. Mark also captured the VSGA 4-ball championship as well as the VSGA junior title, in a record that stood for many years as far as the lowest score ever shot. Always blessed with an almost magical ability to recover from trouble and get the ball into the hole, just somehow, he could always do it. Mark used these skills to qualify for and play in the 1981 U.S. Open at Marion. Among his many other victories are 3 Valentine Invitational titles at his home club Hermitage in the Richmond area, as well as the Richmond City Amateur Championship. Mark has recently passed the mantle of best player in the family to his young son, Mark Lawrence Jr., who just last week won the VSGA Junior Match Play Championship and is here this week playing in his very first Virginia State Amateur. George McDonald. George was victorious in 1981 at Danville Golf Club, where years of hard work culminated in his amateur triumph. Always a solid ball striker, George had the perfect game for the exacting precision required at Danville, and he played fantastic golf that week against an unusually strong field, one of the best I ever saw in terms of the quality of the field. George was especially good when it counted most, in the final, when he won by 10-9 to capture the title. George also enjoyed great success in the State Open and was twice the low amateur in that event. Most of George's golf today is fun golf, playing with clients of his wealth management firm. George and his wife, Gwen, have 2 boys. Jeff Horn. Jeff won the 1982 Amateur at demanding Cedar Point Country Club over tenacious John Como. John had used his unfaltering ball striking skills to build an early lead for most of that final. However, as the match neared its end, Jeff came through like a true champion, making a mile of putts over the closing holes to earn a hard-fought 2-1 victory. Always a superb and confident putter, Jeff advanced to the finals that year by besting local favorite Moss Beecroft in a spectacularly played semifinal match. Jeff made a 48-foot birdie bomb on the final hole to beat Moss 1-up, and I don't think Moss has ever gotten over it. Because Moss had it about 12 feet for birdie, and he was licking his chops. Jeff is very open about the fact that winning the State Amateur and persevering through the challenges of amateur golf helped him to mature into the man that he is today. David Tolley. David won the State Amateur at Blacksburg Country Club in 1983, blowing away the field by playing nearly 30 under par for 5 matches. His fantastic golf was really not unexpected, however, because the prior year in the United States Amateur, David reached the final match, where he ran into Jay Siegel, one of the greatest amateurs of all time. David's march to the finals of that U.S. Amateur was waged through the toughest part of the draw and included wins against U.S. Open champion Corey Pavin and USGA Mid-Amateur champion Jim Holtgreave. In his dramatic semifinal win over Holtgreave, on the 21st hole, David got up and down from a 30-yard bunker shot to earn the victory, his place in the finals, and his trip to Augusta for the Masters the following year. Tom McKnight. Tom is a 3-time state titleist and is the only person in history to capture the Virginia State Amateur, the Virginia State Open, the Virginia State Mid-Amateur, and the VSGA 4-ball, all in the same year. Tom was a member of the 3-man squad that captured the USGA State Team Championship in 1995 and was a 3-time victor in the prestigious Eastern Amateur. He was also a finalist in both the United States Amateur and the North and South Amateur. And Tom represented the United States on the 1999 Walker Cup team. That same year, he played in both the U.S. Open and the Masters, making the cut at Augusta and finishing second as second low amateur to Sergio Garcia. Brett West. Brett won the State Amateur Championship in 1986, right here at the Cascades. Brett had a truly memorable week, playing superb golf and besting some outstanding players in his march to the title. In addition to the thrill of winning the tournament, Brett was able to share the experience with his hero, his dad, and his teacher, who had caddied for Brett every round of that championship. Mr. West lugged Brett's bag up and down those hills, those mountains, 2 rounds a day, every day, and he loved every moment of it. Keith Decker. Keith has been the most dominant player in Virginia for the past 2 decades. To date, he has captured 2 state amateur championships and 3 state open titles, as well as 1 senior open championship. A 7-time VSGA Player of the Year, Keith has won a total of 20 VSGA state titles and over 100 individual and 4-ball championships. While it is true, I have personally had to carry Keith to many of his 4-ball victories over the years. Now, you need to laugh a little louder at that. No, well, I've had to carry him for a number of years, and we all know that, of course, but he has had a truly remarkable amateur career, and the way he's going, he has many great years still ahead. He was also a member of that Virginia squad that won the 1995 inaugural USGA State Team Championship. And just as importantly, Keith has been a generous mentor, a great friend, and an outstanding role model for many young people who are just getting started, whether it be in golf or in life. Hank Klein. Hank captured the 1990 Hank captured the 1990 championship at Birdwood in Charlottesville, where Hank's great length gave him a decisive advantage. In addition to his amateur triumph, Hank also captured the VSGA 4-ball championship, and by the way, is partnered with Greg Bales. And if you've ever seen Greg play, you realize that Hank must really be good. And he's won some other 4-balls with Greg over the years as well. But in addition to winning his VSGA 4-ball championship, he was also the low individual in leading Willow Oaks Country Club to the VSGA Team Championship. A 3-time Division III All-American at Methodist College, where he led his team to 2 championships, Hank is also a past winner of the time-honored Townsley Invitational at Danville Golf Club. Alan Barber. Alan beat some of the best players in the state on his way to winning the 1992 Amateur at the Golden Horseshoe. In addition to his state amateur triumph, Alan also captured 2 mid-amateur championships, and he carried Charlie Green to two VSGA 4-ball victories. Charlie is his longtime friend and golfing buddy. Apart from his 5 Virginia state titles, Alan also won the 1998 Mid-Atlantic Amateur Championship at very demanding Congressional, as well as the Biarritz Cup in France and the Valentine Invitational. Scott Inman. Scott captured the 1994 title at demanding... Oh. I love the look on my face, don't you? Oh, go past him. He's not important. Scott Inman. Scott captured the 1994 title at demanding Robert Trent Jones Golf Club, the site of 4 President's Cup matches. The following year at Stony Creek Golf Course at Wintergreen Resort, Scott played great in defense of his title, reaching the final match. A former member of the LSU golf team, Scott also won the prestigious Kenridge Invitational and has 3 victories in the famed Bellhaven 4-ball in Northern Virginia. John Rollins. John won the state amateur here at the Cascades in 1996, and he successfully defended his title the following year at the Virginian. A graduate of VCU, where he established an outstanding collegiate golf career, John has become a fixture on the PGA Tour since turning professional in 1997. To date, he has recorded 3 tour victories and has amassed nearly $18 million in career earnings. Jay Fisher. Jay won a state amateur in 1998 at the Golden Eagle, where he bested longtime Virginia stalwart Pat Talent. Following his victory, Jay focused on raising a family and serving in other areas of golf. He spent 3 years working for the AJGA, the American Junior Golf Association, and 5 years as the assistant golf coach at the University of Virginia. Go Hoos. He and his wife have 2 children. Jay recently decided to leave the coaching ranks, and since accepting a new position at UVA, he hopes to begin to resume competing in the near future. Steve Marino. Steve won the 1999 title at Boonesboro, where he played fantastic golf and defeated Keith Decker in the finals. I happened to be caddying for Keith that day, and so it's really my fault that Keith didn't win another amateur title. But I knew we were in trouble when Steve vaporized his drive on the first hole and then hit a short iron to the par 5 to make eagle. I knew it was going to be a tough match and that Steve was going to be a force to be reckoned with for many years to come. Steve has gone on to have a very fine professional career, even though injuries have held him back a little bit the last couple of years. Following his graduation from UVA and several years on the mini tours, Steve has enjoyed a great career on the tour. In his early years on the mini tours, Steve won twice, and never afraid to go low. One of his tour victories included a 13 under par round of 59. David Passarell. David won the 2000 championship at my home club, Hermitage, defeating one of the strongest fields in the history of the state amateur and propelling him to earn VSGA Player of the Year honors. He also won the 2002 VSGA Mid-Amateur Championship and has twice been the low amateur at the State Open. Among his other victories are the Foxbus Invitational, the Faulkner, and the Jefferson Cup. David has represented Virginia twice at the USGA State Team Championship. David also gives back to the game he loves, working for the First Tee program in Charlottesville for the last 7 years. Ross McIntosh. Ross won the 2001 VSGA Amateur at demanding Robert Trent Jones Golf Club. His length off the tee and a deft putting touch on the ultra-fast putting surface has enabled Ross to keep an upper hand against a series of great players he defeated on the way to the title. Apart from his signature victory in the state amateur, Ross qualified for 2 U.S. Pub Links national championships and played in the prestigious Sunnyhanna Amateur. He has also represented Virginia in a number of cross-border clashes against the Carolinas and West Virginia. Jay Woodson. Jay had really hoped to be here tonight, a great player, but the great news is that his wife just gave birth to a little boy the other day, and that's the reason why he's not here, but he was really hoping to be here. Jay won the 2002 and 2003 State Amateur Championship, and last year captured the Virginia State Open to become only the 7th person in history to win both championships. Following an outstanding collegiate career at James Madison University, Jay turned professional, and to date has achieved 6 wins on the NGA Mini Tour. As many of you know, Jay is appearing on Big Break Mexico, and you're probably following his progress on the Golf Channel. While the filming is over, we of course are sworn to secrecy on what happened, but please keep watching. We're very thrilled that Jay has won the State Open and for the birth of his new baby boy. Billy Hurley. Billy won consecutive state amateur titles in 2004 and 2005. He also claimed victory in the Mid-Atlantic Amateur Championship and was a member of the 2005 Walker Cup team, what Billy describes as his greatest thrill in golf. As many of you know, Billy attended the United States Naval Academy and served our country with distinction for 5 years as a lieutenant following his graduation from Annapolis. An outstanding gentleman. An outstanding gentleman who is truly committed to his faith. Billy is pursuing a professional career is currently playing on the Web.com tour. Chris McCartan. Chris captured the state title in 2006, the last time the state amateur was played here before this year. Prior to attending Wake Forest University, where he played consistently well and great over his 4-year career, Chris had a fine scholastic and junior career that included a victory in the 2003 VSGA Junior Match Play Championship, and which catapulted him to the VSGA Junior Co-Player of the Year in 2003. In 2007, Chris was selected to represent the United States in the Fuji Xerox USA Japan Collegiate Championship. Chris has turned pro and is currently playing on the E-Tour. To date, he has 1 E-Tour victory in the 2011 Samana Classic held in Morocco. Pat Talent. Pat captured the 2007 Virginia State Amateur, and at 53, He is the oldest ever champion of our state tournament. Pat has that rare distinction of winning 2 state amateur titles in 2 states, one in Virginia and one in Maryland. A truly outstanding athlete who was a basketball All-American at George Washington University and a 6th-round draft pick of the Washington Bullets, Pat has played in 25 national championships. He was low amateur in the United States Senior Open and was twice the qualifying medalist in the U.S. Senior Amateur, losing in the finals to Paul Simpson at Lake Nona in 2010. Among Pat's other significant victories are the Mid-Atlantic Amateur Championship, the famed Crump Cup at Pine Valley, the Hugh Wilson Invitational at Marion, the Travis Invitational, the Garden City, as well as the Senior Coleman Invitational and the Kenridge Invitational. He can really play. Brinson Paolini. Brinson is the only person in history to win 3 consecutive Virginia State Amateur Championships. An All-American golfer at Duke University, Brinson was recently presented the 2013 Byron Nelson Award, reflecting his excellence both on the course and in the classroom. As fine a golfer as Brinson is, he has truly distinguished himself as an outstanding gentleman and a sportsman. Brinson is playing in his final state amateur this year before turning professional, and we wish him every future success, unless, of course, he gets in my bracket. Scott Shingler. Scott captured the 2011 Virginia State Amateur title, and his victory catapulted him to being named VSGA Player of the Year. Scott also won the VSGA Mid-Amateur title, as well as the VSGA 4-ball. Apart from his 3 state championships, Scott also has 4 victories in the Northern Virginia Amateur and 3 Washington Metropolitan Golf Association titles. He has twice represented the Commonwealth on Virginia squads at the USGA State Team Championship. Jake Mundy. Jake won the amateur title last year with an impressive performance at Bayville Country Club. Jake just completed his 2nd year at Auburn, and he's already flourishing, having won his first collegiate golf tournament this year. His success was no surprise, coming off an excellent scholastic and junior career where he led Blacksburg High School to 2 consecutive state high school championships and individually won the 2010 title. Jake also won back-to-back VSGA junior championships and was named the VSGA Junior Player of the Year in 2010. I was hitting balls beside Jake today on the practice tee, and I can tell you fellas, he's ready to put up a strong defense this week, so put your big boy pants on. You're going to have to really play well to beat him. Bob Wallace. Bob really would like to have been here tonight. He currently lives in Florida, but he is older in years and is not able to make that trip. But he sent a very wonderful letter about this celebration tonight, and I would like to take just a moment or 2 to read it to you. I think it's well worth every moment. I must compliment the VSG for celebrating the 100th anniversary of its amateur championship this summer. I treasure the memories of my play at the Cascades, our most beautiful and demanding mountain course. The year 1957 was very special for me. A 14-year-old lad, Vinny Giles, took my bag after the qualifying rounds, and we made it home with great fun. Later that year, I played a special event with Tom Strange and met his lovely wife and their twins, Curtis and Alan, who were but knee-high at the time. A few years later, the Navy transferred me back to Norfolk, and I returned to Hot Springs. In that first round, I met a taller and far less friendly Vinny Giles. We had a good match, but as expected, Vinny dusted me. Memories, memories. We had a great life, and I've been most blessed. I spent 30 years in the Navy as a pilot, and that was great. I flew bombers in World War II in North America. And on occasion, after flying long missions, we would stand down, and some of us would hunt antelope. It was then that I met and hunted with a young 2-striper lieutenant named Paul Bryant, later become known as Bear Bryant. He was in a Hedron squadron that performed heavy maintenance on our birds. In later years at the Pensacola Open Pro-Am party, the Bear, now wearing his iconic houndstooth hat, I renewed our acquaintances, and I zapped him for beating my beloved Penn State 4 games in a row. More blessings. My wife, Mary, and I have a wonderful family of 6 children, 3 girls and 3 boys. They were still short people when I won in 1957. Golf has been wonderful for me. In the early days of the 1930s during the Depression, I caddied and learned to play at the famous Tillinghast course at Bluff Point in northern New York on Lake Champlain. I caddied to Babe Ruth's foursome on a number of occasions. He was a fair player and great with us kids. We never asked for an autograph in those days. I caddied 9 holes for 4-time New York Governor Al Smith. The fee in those days was 50 cents for 9 holes, and he paid me $5. It's a wonder I wasn't forever a Democrat after that. Later in the Jacksonville Open, I played with Horton Smith, who won the first and third renewal of the Masters. I also played with Canada's famous Mo Norman, who Sam Snead said was the purest ball striker ever in golf. Mo would hit 50 drives without moving the tee. Truly incredible. Enough sea stories. Again, I commend the VSGA for hosting this incredible reunion. Bob Wallace, the 1957 VSGA Amateur Champion. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce the final past champion to introduce tonight, and who is also the ultimate Virginia Amateur Champion, Vinny Giles. Vinny won our amateur 7 times, which is a record I suspect will never be broken. I also doubt that his USGA record of 37 years between national championships will ever be touched. Vinny has accomplished everything in golf an amateur can achieve in just one lifetime. But to hit just a few of the highlights, he is one of only a handful of golfers to win both the United States Amateur and the British Amateur. He is the only amateur in history to win the United States Amateur and the United States Senior Amateur. He has been low amateur in the Masters, the United States Open, and 3 times at the U.S. Senior Open. He played on 4 Walker Cup teams, and in 1993 he captained the squad to the most lopsided U.S. victory in the history of the matches. If only he were eligible to be the captain of the Ryder Cup. In testament to his lifelong passion for the game, in 2009 he triumphed in the United States Senior Amateur, 37 years after winning the National Amateur. Apart from his remarkable accomplishments, though, Vinny has been a superb sportsman and a great ambassador for golf. He has served as president of the VSGA and given back to the game in a number of other ways. In short, Vinny is an outstanding champion and an honorable gentleman, and we can all be proud that he is a Virginian. Ladies and gentlemen, our speaker for this evening, Vinny Giles.
David, thank you, and thank all of you. Speaker is used loosely. There will be no messages delivered tonight, only a little reminiscing. For all you young guys who are into the guruism of golf today, which I never bought into and never will, there will be no one-shots at a time. I asked Bob Rotella one time, I said, Doc, you made a lot of money selling those books. But let me ask you a question, if I may. Yeah, he's very serious. What's that? I said, have you ever seen a player hit 2 shots at a time? You can imagine what response I got from the great doctor. I have been asked to talk a little bit tonight about the history of the Virginia State Amateur. And before I get into that, let me first thank the 31 past champions that are here. I think today was a very enjoyable day. Sam Wallace, Skeeter Heath, and I were privy to Entertainment Central all day. We had P.D. Carl Peterson, and at one point on the 13th tee, he actually sang to us. It was a very, very interesting day, and I will say a very enjoyable day. Also, thanks to Jamie, to Lee, and to all the VSGA group. VSGA really has gone all out to create this marvelous event, And I think we all owe them a great debt of gratitude. My love affair with the Virginia State Amateur, this goes back a long time. I mean, a long time. I was up here when they had the U.S. Mid-Amateur, and I was asked to be the guest speaker. And Sam Snead was in attendance. I don't know if J.C. was here or not. I think Jack was here. And they asked Sam if he'd like to say a few words, and Sam said, "No, thank you, I really don't." Well, we got out there by the porch, and Sam got a couple of those rums and a little Coca-Cola or whatever the heck it was in there. And the next thing after dinner, Sam said, "Well, I'll say a word or two." And we started back with Sam's career, and after about 25 minutes, I think it was, we were on 1938. And I know I had to catch a plane the next morning from Richmond. It was already about 9 o'clock. And finally, as wonderful as Sam is, and as many great stories as he could tell, they had to give him a hook. And so I promise you, I will get to current before long. But as I said, my love affair with the Virginia State Amateur and the Cascades Golf Course started almost 40 years before most of this year's contestants were born. My first trip here to the State Amateur was at age 12, and my father told me, and I was playing a lot of golf then. I wasn't that good, but I was playing a lot. And my father told me, he said, "Son, this is a men's tournament. It's not a boys' tournament, and you're not playing." I said, "Okay, that's fair enough." He played, and I caddied, and if you really had a great day, you made about $5. So when Bob Wallace talked about getting $5 when 50 cents was the rate, I wish to God the inflation had set in a little later in life. An aside, actually, in 1962, when I won my first state amateur, my father was in the finals of the Virginia State Senior Amateur right here at the Homestead course on the same day, which I've never forgotten. He fortunately only had to play 18 holes. I had to play 36, so he was there for the second 18. I came back again at age 13, same role, caddy, and we stayed at a little bed and breakfast down the road for $6 a day. It was the best food I've ever eaten, with the exception of yours, darling, of course. And at 14, as Commander Wallace mentioned, I picked his bag up for the match play portion of the tournament. And he was not that good. He's kind of scrapey. He could get it around. He could get it up and down. And he comes to the finals, and he's playing Curtis's and Allen's dad, Tom, who really was one of the most elegant players you've ever seen. He worked under Sam Snead, and he must have learned something from Sam, because he had a beautiful, beautiful golf swing. And I'm looking at him, and I'd seen Tom win the Eastern Amateur and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at my man. And I'm saying, God almighty, I mean, this is not a fair fight. I said, Tom's got to be able to give this guy 3 aside. And Tom wasn't having that good a day, and old Commander Wallace, he was still in that fighter plane somewhere. He was just grinding. And he got over on 17, and he drove it out there where you could get it to the green, and it was in a divot. And he went right into that divot. And this is again for you guys who are just here for the first couple of times. You'd never seen one of these in your life. He goes in there with a 2-wood. And he hits this little cut out of this divot, round the pond, rolls it right up on the green at 17. I'm sort of shaking my head. Long story short, he beat Tom, which was, Carl, if they say your win was an upset, this was a major upset. I would caddy here one more time in 1960. I guess I was 17 at the time. Wright Garrett was a very close friend of mine, and Ned Babel was a very close friend of mine. Somebody had obviously beaten me somewhere along the line, and so I had Wright's bag, one of those no-pay jobs. And we went 39 holes. I talked to Wright the other day before I came up here and told him I was coming. He said, I still don't see how I lost that Ned Babel. I could have given him two a side. It's funny, but it's a great tribute to this tournament. He still remembers it. Finally, at age 15, my father said I could play in the tournament. And I got the last spot in the championship flight. I won a match. And my second match was against Mr. Connie Sellers, 1958. And I made a rope on the last hole. I made a long putt on the last hole to go extra holes. And we tied the first hole. I don't even remember what happened. The second hole, I've got the second hole won if I can finish it. Long story short, I lost the second hole. And as I recall, I went over in the woods to the right of the second fairway, had a little cry, because I didn't understand that was what was supposed to happen, that this wasn't supposed to happen. But back then, for you younger fellows who are here for the first few times, the state amateur was at the championship flight level, it was a golf tournament. At the second flight and below, it was a social event. There were 16 flights of 8 players. And there's a little place right off that room we had the reception back then called the Homestead Club where you could store your whiskey. And there was many a night at 3 o'clock in the morning they were just repacking that whiskey. I was up here one year and there was a gentleman who, my wife has told me not to mention names even though they are all long since have departed this scene. There was a gentleman who'd been out all night, had quite a few drinks. I will tell you, he was from the Hermitage Club in Richmond, Virginia. He walked up for his first round match to the first tee. He teed it up. He caught it in the back of the heel, not in the heel, the back of the heel, behind the hosel if it had been an iron. And they used to park cars right to the left of the first fairway up to about where that forward tee is up there. Well, the ball rolled over in the cars. So he went over there and somebody said, I think your ball's right over here. I think it went under that forward over there. He meandered over there and he looked under, he saw that ball. Kid, he said, I'll get it. No, I got it, he said. He crawled up under that car. He never came out. They gave him about 15 minutes. They said, okay, that match is over. Next, we had another gentleman who, again, Miss Key has told me not to mention his name. I won't. But he was from right over the mountain where Key and I grew up in Lynchburg. And he proceeded to, he was not in the championship flight. This fellow that crawled under the car was in the championship flight. But he was in about probably the 16th flight. And he'd been overserved for a week. And he finally meandered on out for his match, and he got down to number 9. He was just off the front right fringe, and he fell out. And he was a really belligerent old fellow. And finally, they said, what do we do? I said, you don't want to move that SOB. He said, he might hit you. So this is God's honest truth. They staked him, ground under repair. And they left him there the entire day till he finally came to and meandered on off under his own power. So that, for you young guys, is the state amateur of old. Now you got a bunch of you kids that hit it 100 yards past me that are playing hard and are serious, but that crew wasn't too serious back then. Back after I started playing and had played a little bit, I came up against a young lad from Richmond, probably one of the most jovial fellows that we all know, and he's a dear, dear friend of mine and a dear friend of some others in this room. 15-year-old Bobby Wad out of Richmond, Virginia, and we're playing and we're having a pretty good match, and this guy is not much fun to play golf with at 15. And we get to the 13th hole, and I've forgotten how we stood, but I hit a big larrapin slice all the way over in the 14th fairway. And Bobby, even then, could still move it pretty well. He drove it right down the middle of the fairway, and I hit some goofy shot from over there on the green about 30 feet. Bobby hits an 8-iron or something, 15 feet in the hole, and I make the 30-footer, and he misses. And I said, we're walking off. Well, I almost apologized. That was really fortunate. Well, I mean, I got an earful from this 15-year-old. I said, I better dust him on off. He might hurt me before we finish. When Lanny was 16, I played him for the first time. And this is typical Lanny, who I don't think, and Curtis knows him as well as anybody in the room, I don't think there's a better competitor in the world. At his apex, if you hit a pin behind a brick wall and he had a 1-iron in his hand, he bet he could knock one of the bricks out and hit it up there where the pin was. And we're playing, and we get to the 16th hole, and long story short, I beat him 3-2. And we're walking back up there used to be a road that went along that creek, and we're walking back up the road, and I see him in front of me shaking his head. I went up, kind of put my arm around him. I said, "What's wrong, Lynn?" And he turned around and he said, "You know," he said, "it's the best I've ever played in my life. You just beat the hell out of me." And the message was, nobody does that to Lanny Watkins. And that's the way he was, and that's why he was such a great competitor. And David talked about his Ryder Cup record. I mean, you just weren't going to beat him. He wouldn't let you. I mean, he used to tell me, he said, "I bet you," and again, this is old dollars. This isn't new tour dollars. That's funny money they play for now. But he said, "I bet you I've left $500 million on the table backhanding those putts in the last 5 holes because I knew I couldn't win, and I just kind of lost interest." These kids today are perfectly happy to finish between 75 and 125 and win $2 million. Half of them don't even try to win golf tournaments. I played Lanny again at Pinehurst in the North and South. It was funny, I played Bobby in the morning in the quarterfinals, Lanny in the semifinals. And Lanny needed to chip in on the 17th hole to keep the match going. And he didn't chip in. And he had one of these, he was at Wake Forest at the time, he had a staff bag about this big. And he had that little caddy, Fletcher, I think his name, had caddied for him down there. And he had this wedge in his hand, and he took that wedge and fired it in that bag. Well, you know, back then those bags had those big wells. And the grip hit the bottom of the bag, and all of a sudden it's coming right back out, and it's coming right in Lanny's nose, and he jumped back and he said, "I don't think I'm going to do that again." But the finals, which was this reminiscence up here, Lanny and I played. Lanny was the reigning U.S. amateur champion in 1971, and we played in the final here, and it was a deal where they made the big deal about dream final, if they can just get in different brackets, if they can just win matches, do this. Well, they got their dream match. And all I can remember, we had a great match. That's all I can really remember. It was good. The golf was good, but Lanny plays faster than anybody I've ever known, with the exception of somebody was mentioned tonight, Greg Bales. He does play faster than Lanny. And we came up over the hill on 9, probably at 9:15. We teed off at 8. It couldn't have been any later than that. And we looked down there, and there must have been 1,500, 2,000 people ringing that green, cars all up and down 220. And that's the sight that I remember most at the State Amateur of any I've seen. I mean, fortunately, I was too old to come up against Curtis and Skeeter and some of those guys, or even Keith. I was too old even to play against Keith. A lot of these memories have faded, as you can well imagine. It's not my fault. But still remembering so many of the characters. And back then, the 40-year-old players, I mean, the George Fultons, the Connie Sellers, and Ed Babers, the guys that were a little bit older, they were really the Winslow Spencers we mentioned. They were the guys that were the favorites to win the golf tournament. The college players, and there weren't that many back then. They didn't give that many scholarships at Selland, certainly when I was in school. We were really the wannabes. We were the little whippersnappers that the big boys would knock off. By the quarterfinals, they'd start bumping us out of the way. As you can imagine now, the game has changed. I mean, I would bet you that shoot, I don't know what the average age is of the contestants, but it's low. I mean, the Cascades was a long golf course back then. Now it's short. I mean, I was talking to a young man on the front porch a little while ago. He said, there might be 4 holes I can hit a driver on. Well, I'm going to tell you what, I need to hit a driver on every hole. I mean, and if the ground gets soft, I need 2 drivers on some of them. But the VSGA has a wonderful array of great champions, many of whom are here tonight. Lanny, Curtis, Chandler Harper, I mean, I could go on and on. John Rawlins has had a wonderful career. You know, the future is the people like Brinson Paolini, and even though not a champion, Evan Beck, who I think have got a chance to be wonderful players for many years to come. And there are lots and lots of, of guys who didn't win who are superb players. The Homestead's been a gracious host to many of our championships. I think you said 43. We certainly welcome the new owners, the Omni Hotel Group, and Robert Rowling to Virginia, and I hope they'll continue the great VSGA Homestead partnership. I want to thank the Homestead and the VSGA and all the past champions for a great evening. Wish all of the players the best of luck and best wishes to everybody. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, can we take this back? Come on, let's go. Come back. Come on, let's go. Come on. Obviously, this wasn't planned, and had no idea that David wasn't going to talk about himself. I had no idea David had any humor in his body. Really? And I've been around David a long time, and he'll put you to sleep. But I think he's taking it on the road after tonight. I'm not sure. David is a great champion. He and I have been partners for over 20 years now. He did win 2 state amateur titles in '93 and '95. He's won 3 mid-amateur titles, I believe. He's won 3 4-ball titles. He was part of the winning United States team championship in 1995. He's won, I know, 5 Kenridge Invitationals, probably 4 or 5 Valentine Invitationals, several Foxpuss Invitationals. But David is a true gentleman. We all know that. We've seen it tonight. He's very, very humble. He didn't want to even, present his own accomplishments here. He's been a great friend of mine. He deserves a full round of applause for what he said about everybody tonight. He is a true gentleman of Virginia golf, and I'm proud that he's my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant, and thank you, Keith. And I had planned in my remarks to mention David's accomplishments, but Keith, no, absolutely wonderful. No, wonderful, wonderful. My wife is here this evening. All right. Thank you, David, for your efforts and the time spent in providing some history and some interesting tidbits of information. Thank you, Vinny, for sharing your memories with all of us. Your accomplishments, along with the accomplishments of other past champions, are very special. We'd be remiss if we didn't thank all of the past champions for taking the time to be with us to celebrate this special occasion. It means a lot to the organization. Wow. To hear the stories of what winning the VSGA Amateur has meant to these champions is wonderful. As we have witnessed, there is a strong history of golf in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we thank all of you for your tremendous support in the past and the future. We may not be here to celebrate 200, but we are experiencing the history tonight and this week. What stories will unfold over the next 100 years? Let's continue to make them exciting and memorable. The 100th Amateur Championship will begin tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. on number 1 and number 10 tees. We want to wish the contestants the best of luck, and for those not competing, if you can stick around and watch some exceptional golf, that would be great. But if you must leave, we hope wherever the road takes you, you will remain safe. Thank you, have a good evening, and we do look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you very, very much.